Oh, you want to see something cool? No? Well, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Step into the scene! No, nobody can do it like me! Soup house plate with the king cuisine! I was the black top king! 360s in my green machine! I was a kid and I was breaking down doors! Listening to Tribe, now we on a world tour! We gave him hell and now we gonna give him more! JVB, Mighty Morphin like Megazord! Yo, power like Ranger, range like Rover, strong bulldozer! Autobots roll out, hit the scene! Fresh wax on the paint, it's clean! All the gang, light up the tires, the JC's popping and spitting out fire! Never retire, stare and admire, my drip don't expire! Oh my god, that is fire!
All Japan Day is one of the biggest JDM car events in Australia, and this was the first year that I entered my car as well as filmed a POV photography. Now, two questions people had going into that event were: one, how do you shoot in harsh sunlight? And two, how do you find good angles for cars when they're all so close together and it's hard to kind of work between them? So my secret sauce for shooting harsh sunlight is in here, and this is a filter kit from Earth and contains two filters: a circular polarized filter or CPL and a neutral density filter or an ND filter. Most people have heard of the CPL, which cuts down on polarized light from the sun, but the neutral density filter cuts down on all available light, which you can see here is actually taking off quite a bit for that light tube. Whereas this one here is only taking off about 1 stop versus 6 stops with this ND64. So your CPL acts like sunglasses for your filter. Stopping. CPL acts like sunglasses for your camera lens. By cutting down on the polarized light from the sun, you need to be rotating the CPL regularly throughout the time of day, as well as depending on the angle of the car that you're shooting at, to reduce any reflections you don't want to have. You can never reduce all reflections because light will bounce off at different angles depending on the surface. It's always going to be at a 90-degree angle depending on the sun. So if the sun's directly overhead, it's probably going to be more that way versus earlier in the morning, it's coming an angle here, this way. You have to adjust your CPL accordingly and rotate it which I always forget to do. So sometimes I don't have reflections cut out even though I've got it on. This is an ND64, which is quite strong. It cuts down 6 stops of light. And when you're talking about aperture and f-stops, the f-stop number itself is a representation for that lens's maximum aperture opening. So the lens I chose for All Japan Day is this big boy Canon lens here, 28-70 f2. I think this is the best lens that's ever been made. Canon have definitely outdone themselves with this. It's so sharp, not only in the center of the lens, but all the way to the edges, and it's sharp throughout the entire zoom range as well. Using this replaces the need for me to carry multiple prime lenses. I can do 35, 50mm and long telephoto 70mm as well. So when you're talking about a lens being f2, you're saying that that's a fraction of how wide the aperture can open. So f2 means it will open about half as wide as the entire diameter of the lens. And that's how much light that can be let in. And that's how you get a much brighter image for an f2 versus an f2.8. And why f2.8 is half as bright as f2 is because as a power of the square root of 2, it's letting in half as much light as f2. So for me, having a great lens like this means I don't really have to think too much about what I'm working with. I know the limits of this lens. I know what shots I can take. This decision making upfront prior to going to events, I'm not wasting time changing lenses on my camera, and I can just focus on getting the shots I want. And the kit to get these lenses is a 95mm thread, which is massive. It cost me almost $400 to get a kit that had the filters that I need for this lens, but it was well worth it. I've used this so many times. I've traveled with this to Japan, I've traveled with this to Italy, and it's been a banger of a lens every time. I'm very happy with it. Definitely getting my money's worth. You don't need a $5,000 lens to take great photos, and you don't need a $5,000 lens to shoot in harsh sunlight. All you need are these filters. The ND filter will do such a great job of making it so much easier to shoot in harsh sunlight, and it's only as expensive as the filter thread size that you've got. So if you've got smaller lenses, especially if you've got a crop sensor camera, you're probably going to get much cheaper filters than what you would need with this. So when it comes to shooting cars that are close together, you got to work with what you got. You can't try to think about, oh, if only I could move this car. Okay, you can't touch the cars, you can't rearrange them, they're all packed in. You just got to find angles that are interesting for you. And for me, it's going to be, what are the features of the car that I can focus on? What's going to make an interesting foreground for this car? What is going to make a good shot? If there's an interesting car, I can't get a good shot, I'm just not going to waste any time. So if I'm trying to get an engine-based shot of a car and there's another car next to it, I might be able to actually shoot across the bonnet of this car to get into a nice engine-based shot of this car here. That's a mosquito. if I'm trying to get the spoiler of one of these cars, I might shoot across the spoiler of another car or the roof line of another car. If I'm focusing on the tires or the wheels or the lights, whatever stands out to me, being JDM cars, there's always going to be those awesome fender mirrors. They're going to stand out to me as well. If it's a really cool high performance car, then maybe I'll just look for the most aggressive angle, which tends to be from lower down, looking up, maybe off in distance. So I could actually be standing quite a while away from this car, or I might be shooting across 3 or 4 cars to get the shot of it that I want. So you'll probably see a lot of that in the video. I haven't actually edited the video yet, I'm starting to edit it now, but I'm going to try to get my 2.5 hours of footage down to 15 minutes or so and see how we go with that. Something else that I like doing is blocking. So I might actually use this car here to block out something undesirable like my face here to get in focus the other car and then get the features of that car, and then that way you don't have as many distractions in the image. You get some nice depth if you're showing with this other car in the foreground. And then people in the background, just you don't worry about them too much, they're going to be out of focus. Or thanks to the ND filter, if you're shooting at lower shutter speed, the motion blur tends to blur them out a bit more, which takes care of any distracting elements, unless they're really bright colors. I like to start the day dialing in my camera settings, usually with photos of my own car, because I forget to do that at every car meet I go to. And then I just go on the hunt looking for any obviously interesting cars or quirky things or people interacting with their cars. These early shots just help make sure that I've got the right settings I want for the rest of the day to get the look. Before it gets too busy, it's good to get shots of the hero cars and the standouts on display, which is what I'm doing here. Plus that early morning light really makes the shots look so much better, more aesthetic. And parked cars are pretty boring, so having people looking or pointing and engaging with cars, talking around them, I think makes a shot more interesting. This is a car event after all, so actually seeing the community involved just makes it that much more enjoyable, I think. Then I noticed this yellow RX-7, there's people around it talking, you've got all the cars in the background. I think it really helps set the scene of the event as a whole and what All Japan Day is all about. So for me, this is like my hero shot. This is my first panning shot of the day, just testing out that slow shutter speed. I think it turned out pretty well as the straggler rocked up. I've got a soft spot for Cavalier King Charles. I just love dogs and they make me so happy, so I capture them every chance I get. Almost as happy as hearing an RX-7. And I think just as it rolls in slowly with that morning light behind it, it's a great shot to capture. At this point, I'm just walking around and taking photos of anything that stands out. Whether it's cars I know or white wheels on a car I'm very partial to, and the boxy look, pop-up headlights, people looking at their cars and getting them just right, I think really adds a bit more to it. I never pass up the opportunity to get a photo of a dog. Just seeing their happy smiles brings so much positive energy. A fellow photographer hand-knit these cute little whales that were free to take, so I couldn't resist. At this point now, I'm just trying to find all the angles to fit in cars and working between them, shooting over spoilers or roofs just to actually fit them into the shot and get a decent composition as well as going for the close-ups. I generally prefer the longer focal lengths just to get that compression going on and bring the background closer to the subject. It also helps when adding depth to the image when you're shooting over the bonnet or anything else to add some bokeh into the foreground. I'm using the boot and spoiler of this car to help frame the car I'm actually taking a photo of, and it just gives a bit more visual interest to the photo, I think. I thought this Supra was just a really clean, well done build and kind of toned down but very nicely presented. It's not a colour you see often, and that carbon fibre diffuser just nestling the exhaust looked pretty cool. The easiest angle to make a sports car look good is just getting low down from the front at a 3/4 angle. It makes the car look way more aggressive. Taking some group shots where I can also just helps add to the overall atmosphere of the event. I can't get enough of using a car close to the lens to add some visual interest to the foreground of a shot. Sniper shot of this cute little dog as it follows its owner around the event. This is another hero shot for me of getting some people just hanging out in the back of their pickup with the light filtering in through the trees behind them. Just adds more to the image and that social dynamic as well as the setting of where this event's taking place. Fun fact is that the McLaren F1 borrowed the idea of this style of doors from the Toyota Sierra. The key for me to take photos of the car is if other people find it interesting and are checking it out. Here we have another clean Supra that was just tastefully done, and I framed the spoiler to deliberately be just below the wheel Supra, so it's almost like it's perched on it. Carbon fibre details on cars are just a quick win for an interesting shot, especially when they look aggressive like this WRX. I'm not worried about people in the background because my depth of field is so shallow. I know they'll just be blurred out. It was a pretty hot day, so I thought it was kind of funny to see this kid hiding in the shadow of another car next to this Supra. The last of the cars have finally arrived, so I'm detail hunting here, just trying to get some close-ups that seem interesting, capturing a bit of the interior details that people often overlook, whether it's the shifters or the roll cage they've got set up. Always remember to back up and get that aggressive low shot as well. At this point I just give up worrying about if people are in the shot and I just try to take a photo when it seems least distracting. It's a car event, people are here to see the cars. I'm only going to ask people to move if they're actually blocking the camera. Shout out to the car owner for leaving their window down, made it so much easier to get these beautiful interior shots, focusing on the details like the shift knob and the 2000 GT logo. You just have to be patient at car events. By waiting a little bit or moving the camera slightly, you reduce distractions in the background. It is nice when people wait for you to take photos though, but they don't have to. I'm happy to wait 5 to 10 minutes to get the shot I want, and I can just work around people as they walk by, or take the photo when they're hidden behind the bonnet. Here's an example of what a bit of patience will get you. It almost looks like there never was a crowd in this shot, but I just waited for them to be hidden by the pillars of the car. I just thought the interior of this car was sick. I had to get a photo of it. It's such a classic look. I thought it was funny that this girl just walked and stopped completely in front of my camera while I took a photo. Some people don't mean to, but it's just a hilarious moment. So I like clean builds and I like well done modified builds. Like here they've committed to this theme of pink and love hearts. The little details of the headlight to be in the shape of a love heart was just awesome to see. They had a fully decked out interior that was interesting with lots of shapes and colours to take photos of. And even under the wrap they'd embedded stickers for texture. The second oval had old classics, and this RX-4 was just attention grabbing. Had a beautiful engine bay, cool interior, a lot of work had been done to modernise it. I'm a huge 240Z car fan, so I love just capturing whenever I can. Some of the vendors like Vehicle Joy had their cars on display, and I just love trying to capture the glitter twinkling in the sun, as well as all the stickers covering it. I didn't even realise it was banged up, but I think it's a drift car, so it's cool to see that on display. This Toyota Corona with its Golf livery, I just thought was beautiful. Had to capture it, such a classic. Love the little stickers and details on it too. I thought that was pretty funny. And there's something about the simplicity of older cars and the details they've got and how they design things like the steering wheel and stalks on the steering wheel just make them so cool. And I can never get enough of fender mirrors. Not JDM, but just a 296 GTB Ferrari cruising through Glenelg. Couldn't help myself getting a panning shot of it. By this point it was getting pretty hot and I was starving, so I just went for brunch at one of my favourite locals, Fourth in Glenelg. Back at it after brunch, I'm just looking for the weird and wonderful details like this Pikachu and love heart shaped exhaust. Another Pokemon themed car going on here as well. I thought it was cute. I just thought the way that this dog was sitting so chill was hilarious, and he just sat there while I took a photo. It was so great. By this point I'd already done quite a lot of laps, so now I'm just showing off the ambience and vibe of the event. It's pretty huge, there's hundreds and hundreds of cars, catching up with friends and chatting and just hunting down interesting things to look at. I didn't realise that this was the debut of Japanese style plates finally for the first time in South Australia. A few states like Queensland and Victoria had already had them for a while, but it's cool that they're here now. Sneaking in a few more low shots of group cars and any final interesting cars that stood out to me, like this Subaru Legacy STI edition. Another example of something that's eye-catching yet subtle, and even other people were checking it out, which you can see in the background there. Another hero panning shot of this patina Z going around the roundabout. As cars start leaving the event, they filter out onto a public road, so they're not moving very fast, getting stuck in traffic. But you can still pull off some pretty cool panning shots just with that slight bit of motion at a slower shutter speed. I'm only really able to pull off that slower shutter speed thanks to the ND filter on the car. But I do try to capture the crowd and people admiring the cars as they go by as well, just add a bit more energy and excitement to the event even though they're driving really slow. Again, it's not JDM, but it's hard to resist taking a photo of a G-Wagon. It helps to keep moving so you don't have shots that are always from the same angle, which is a bit boring, plus you get different perspectives of cars as they leave, and even a few close-up details as they interact with the crowd, like this Miata flicking its headlights up and down. I worked my way from the street to the exit gate because there was less traffic and then I could get a bit more motion as cars drove by. This is another hero shot. People love RX-7s, you feel like you're in the crowd, and I'm getting some great motion blur at 150. They always try to focus on the leading edge of a car, especially when they're turning, because there's going to be more motion blur on the part that's further away from you. I just thought it was cool seeing this person start up their motorbike as they got ready to leave. They don't need to be moving fast to make a panning shot look cool. Moving position again, just to switch up the angle, get some different cars rolling out. White cars and white wheels are always going to get my attention. I just think it's an iconic look. This is a great hero shot of the Autozam rolling out as he reaches up to pull his door down, and all the people watching loved it too. I was just trying to snap a photo of this Suzuki Carry masquerading as a Holden, but I didn't realise he was going to give a high five. I really wanted to get a photo of that little Yorkie in the old man's hands, but that two-tone Silvia was pretty cool too. Swapping spots again, and I think it's so much more interesting seeing that guy with the slow lollipop in the background. It's like he's almost holding these cars slow as they drive by. It's also pretty awesome to see this parade of the classic RX series driving by. They're a beautifully styled rotary sedan. You'd think a baby blue S15 would stand out. Somehow I missed this in the display, but I'm glad I caught it leaving. I just like that little love heart indicator detail, that's pretty cool. At this point I think I've gotten pretty good at these low speed panning shots. It almost makes it look like the cars are speeding as they exit, but they're really doing like 10 kilometers an hour if that. This STI regularly drives through the Adelaide Rally, and the first time I came to All Japan Day a few years ago, it actually had its roof crushed in, a casualty of the rally experience. Capturing a few photos of my mate's Miata and getting some close-up detail shots. I've definitely nailed these low-speed panning shots here of the 2000 GT as it drives off. Looks very fast for a slow car. Most cars had left, so I'm getting the last of the standouts and stragglers, trying to give my calves a rest from the sunburn they've received. The clean S15 and Supra make for a very iconic shot of All Japan Day. And this GTO I didn't see earlier, but I thought it was awesome. And that's it, wrapping up my speed run of All Japan Day. My day started just before 7 and ends about 4:30, so walking around for 8 hours is pretty exhausting. I just went home to crash. Now that the roads are clear, I couldn't resist the quick boost. If you've made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate you watching. Less than 5% of people seem to watch videos to the end, so if it's interesting, just like and subscribe, and that will help encourage me to keep creating more content like this. This little kid encouraging me to do a burnout. I'm like, nah, my car's too slow. People are just watching, waiting like, come on, do something.